And once again, welcome everybody to this webinar on project management coaching. Achieve your project management goals. Now first I have to tell you that this may be a little bit of a different webinar from the ones that you normally hear, because we're actually not going to go through how to manage your project better or tips and tools for managing your project. This will be a webinar where you will be actively participating, although I can't speak to you. Well, I can speak to you, but you can't speak to me. You will be actively engaged in this coaching process. So I require you to be in a place where you feel comfortable, preferably in a place where you won't be disturbed. And I also encourage you to have pen and paper by your side, because I am going to ask quite a few questions and I will ask you to make notes as we go through this. So the purpose of the next hour or so is really for you to get a clearer picture of what you want to achieve as project managers. Not for your project, but for you in your careers. What kind of project manager do you want to become? And what does success look like for you? So there are some of the things that we will be spending time on. And once we go through the goal setting exercise, where you will get a clearer picture of your goals, after that we will look at some tips and tools you can use to actually achieve those goals. But first of all, let me spend a little bit of time talking you through my story. Not my credentials, you've already heard those. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came into coaching. That's going to help illustrate the power of coaching, really. Now, I'm going to take you back about 5 years. 5 years ago, I was running a very large project here in London for a major bank. And it was all about capital savings. And in fact, the day we implemented the project, we saved 150 million. So you can see the importance of this project. It really had to be done yesterday. And I'm sure that a lot of you will have been in that situation. Projects have to be done yesterday. I felt that the entire weight of this project was on my shoulders. I worked long hours. I was always the last one to leave the office. I was micromanaging the team. I didn't have time to go for lunch. And sometimes I would come home on a Friday night and I would just cry. Not because anything was wrong, just because every drop of energy had been squeezed out of me. There was nothing left. I was just exhausted. So imagine that's the kind of state I'm in. And at the same time, I go on a leadership course, a 5-day leadership course, residential, so off-site, no running away. And basically, I had such an aha moment during this leadership course. It basically changed my outlook and how I manage and lead projects. Because as part of that course, not only did we start looking at how we manage and lead people on our project, we also had a personal coach assigned. And I still remember my first coaching session. What happened was that I realized within this 1-hour session that I had a choice. That I had a choice of how I operate as a project manager. I realized that it didn't have to be inherently stressful. Up until that point, I thought, well, you're in project management, you have to take the stress, you have to take the long hours. I actually realized that I had a choice. I realized that it was up to me to define how I wanted to work, how I wanted to interface with the team, how late I wanted to work. And I set out on a road to actually working smarter rather than harder. So I started doing goal setting. I started becoming conscious of where I wanted to go. Up until that point, I hadn't been conscious about it at all. I'd just drifted along and taken the projects that came up. So realizing these things really brought about a couple of items for me. First of all, I started looking at how I could work smarter rather than harder. And secondly, I decided to become a coach. I decided to study coaching. And that also led me on to writing my first book, the Project Management Coaching Workbook. Now, I always wanted to write a book, but there are so many books out there telling you what to do on project management. But this book is quite different in that it guides you through, first of all, what you want to achieve, what your strengths are, what your aspirations are. And secondly, it helps you to get that which you want by using self-assessments and lots of tools and techniques. And only in the last part of the book do I give you the tools and techniques you need to manage a project, depending on the specific areas you need to develop in. So that's kind of a bit of background to why I am where I am and why I am so interested in project management coaching and why I believe that everybody will achieve their career goals much faster if they have a goal, if they're conscious about where they're going. So why is goal setting so important? Well, I've partly answered that in telling you about my own story. If we don't know where we're going, we can't reach a point. So that's really why we need to know where we're headed. Everyone wants to grow and develop, and I'm guessing that most people on this call want to grow and develop. If you just stay average, then you're not going to make a difference. Then you're not going to achieve your goals. There are lots of average project managers out there. You need to decide to step up and to give the world that which you have to offer, your unique talents. So some of my questions to you are coming up here in a minute. Do you have a really clear picture of where you're going and what your aspirations are? Do you understand what your strengths are and how they can help you achieve your aspirations? Do you understand what your weakest points are and how they may be holding you back? Do you have a plan for how you can improve on a daily basis and achieve that which you dream of? So it's really the answer to these questions that will help you form and shape where you're going. Can you see that if you don't know the answer to these questions, you may just be drifting along? Maybe a recruiter calls you and say they have a new position and you're like, oh, I don't really know if it's for me or not, you're in doubt. But if you know where you're going, if you know what your aspirations are, if you understand your strengths and how to use your strengths, then you'll be much better positioned to actually decide what is right for you and what is not right for you. Then you're able to become a master of your own destiny, as we say. Then you may choose roles just because they develop you in the right direction. So let's now begin a little exercise with you. For this exercise, you definitely need to have pen and paper. As I said, you need to be really comfortable where you are. I'm going to guide you through a little visualization exercise here to have you think about the things that you dream of from a career point of view. So, what I want you to think about right now is your whole career to date. I want you to think about the successes you've had and the challenges you've had. Think about all the projects you have managed, the teams you've led, and the people who mattered to you. Think about the friends you've made along the way and the conflicts you've had. And think about the biggest achievements in your career. What were those defining moments? And on that journey in your past, who inspired you? Who stood out as your role models? Who did you admire for one thing or another? So just take a moment now to write down what comes to your mind. Who are your role models? And why did you aspire to them? This could be people who you work with, close or from a distance. It could be different types of people. It doesn't have to be project managers. Most often our role models are people who, well, we look up to because they have something that we feel that we're lacking. And that gives us a good indication of what it is that we want to acquire skills ourselves. So just write down what comes to your mind. Who are your role models and why do you aspire to them? Now, from this journey in your past, which strengths and unique talents did you make use of? What did people compliment you for? What felt the most natural to you? So in other words, when you do things really well, what is it that you do? What is it that you do really well? What is your hidden potential, which you may not yet have